What is up, guys? Welcome on back to the news with TK. In about 45 minutes away from me right now, there is a massive riot that's been going on in Los Angeles for the last 3 days. And we're going to get into the intro, we're going to get into a clip, and then I'm going to ask you a very important question at the end. Because it might be time to go hit correspondent on the street.
Awful is the conduct of both Gavin Newsom.
Okay, so joining us now is Jonathan Fahey, former acting ICE director and former federal prosecutor. Thank you, sir, so much for joining us. First, I just want to get your thoughts on the response right now that we're seeing in Los Angeles. Folks in cars trying to get through on the 101 being stopped by protesters or rioters, depending on who the person is.
Yeah, what is happening here is really awful, and I think what makes it so awful is the conduct of both Gavin Newsom and Mayor Bass on this, because they are taking the side of rioters, as you know, sort of bringing us back to 2020 BLM, and they're putting the public safety secondary to their political agenda, which is open borders. It is so shameful, and I think President Trump earlier talked about sort of the incompetence of Mayor Bass and Gavin Newsom, but it's so much worse than this. This is malevolence. They are not even trying to stop this. They're speaking out on behalf of the protesters and not supporting these officers that are simply doing their job. And I think one thing that's important to note, just because Joe Biden and Alejandro Mayorkas refused to enforce immigration laws, that was their responsibility. Donald Trump is doing what he is required to do. It's not just simply a political decision. It's a requirement of his job. And this is so shameful. This shouldn't even be happening. But there's no support from the state and local, not the law enforcement, because I'm sure they're in line, but the state and local officials are not supporting federal law enforcement, and people are in danger because of it.
Jonathan, Guy Benson here. You used to direct ICE. You were the acting director of that agency, so you know what this work looks like and what it's supposed to be. Describe what ICE agents have been up to in this area of Southern California, and then describe the violence that has been directed at them by so many of these people.
Well, my understanding, this all happened when they were serving a warrant a few days ago, and again, a warrant issued by a federal judge to look into alien harboring, which is a very serious crime, as you all know. And so that's all started in reaction to that. And they, from my understanding, they have had things like, rocks thrown at them. They've been assaulted in other ways. And we've seen this from a lot of politicians. This is predictable. The rhetoric, referring to ICE agents as the Gestapo and things like that, this is the natural next step in all of this. And it's really scary because these are people that put their lives on the line to make us safer, and they should be able to expect the support of the local authorities against people like this. And unfortunately, they're not. And something really bad is probably going to happen, and it's going to be preventable. And because our local officials in Los Angeles, let's say the local officials in Los Angeles were doing nothing to stop this. So these people are put in danger. They're put in fear of their lives, just simply doing their jobs, which is to deport illegal aliens. And when you see the people being deported, these are dangerous criminals. So they're making the community better by deporting them. And the Democratic Party, and this is the Democratic Party doing this, is fighting every single deportation because they have an open borders agenda. And the way to elevate yourself within that party is to be as far open borders as you can be.
Jonathan, from a political perspective, it's like watching Thelma and Louise at the end driving off that cliff from a political strategy perspective, because you look at polls showing 75 to 80% of Americans, right? So that doesn't mean Republicans or conservatives, but we're going into independents and even some Democrats support criminal deportations. Can you even get into the logic of all these Democrats, whether it be Gavin Newsom or Maxine Waters or the L.A. Mayor Karen Bass or Tim Walz or Kamala Harris? I could go down the line as far as why they are against this happening, because most of the American people want this to happen, yet they continue to jump into this quicksand and they don't want to change course. What do you make of that?
I think it actually makes sense because the Democratic Party is about 5% on this issue, but the way for them to elevate themselves within the party is to be completely radical on the issue. Yeah, it's crazy on the sort of the broader electoral sense because it isn't a popular issue, but their party is so out there on this issue that the only way they'll get any traction is to be for open borders against ICE. And the first person in the party that starts supporting ICE and supporting law enforcement, they're going to be cast aside in this party. This party's been so radical, and it's not just been recently. 2020, the anti-police wing of the party dominated, and BLM, they turned over policing to BLM in a lot of Democratic cities. But it makes sense, not for broader winning elections. It won't work there, but it will help elevate themselves. Tim Walz was, I would say politically dead, and now he's coming back by going down the Gestapo route and all these other things. And he's getting traction. And it's sad, it's pathetic. It's not in the interest of the American people in any respect, but they frankly don't care.
Jonathan, it's Lydia Hu. Thanks for your time this evening. I want to ask you about, I guess, kind of some legal questions that the Democratic governors are raising about President Trump's use of his authority to deploy the National Guard. I guess they're making a big deal about the president's use of sending federal resources over the governor's objection, saying that this is something that really the states should handle. And I just wonder, as a former federal prosecutor as well that you are, what you make of that issue and where, does that have legs? Where could that really go? I mean, could they challenge President Trump's, use of federal resources here?
They can, but they're wrong. And it's kind of an irony to the whole thing because they're saying that the states should handle it. And I think President Trump would be, the state should handle it, but clearly they're not. And in fact, they're supporting the rioters. But the president has the governor has the authority, but the president also has the authority if rioters are getting in the way of the enforcement of federal law, which they are here, the immigration law. He has the absolute authority to do so. It's appropriate to do so. And I would say in this situation, it's a requirement to do so. His job is to keep these officers safe, to enforce federal law, and keep the community safe. And it's unfortunate that Gavin Newsom won't use his authority and won't use his influence because he would rather, promote, again, this open borders agenda. And he couldn't care less about the citizens of Los Angeles or citizens of California because a greater constituency, again, is this illegal alien pro-open border constituency. But yes, on the legal issues, President Trump is correct here. And it's unfortunate the local officials won't do their jobs.
Jonathan, bear with me here for just a second as I give just a little update because I want to continue this conversation. We all do here. The Los Angeles Police Department Central Division 13 minutes ago posted the California Highway Patrol have entered the southbound lanes of the 101 freeway and are attempting to disperse the demonstrators off the freeway. Jonathan, I don't know if you can see your screen, but we are watching for any activity that comes out of that. At the same time, Governor Newsom's office sent a letter to Defense Secretary Hegseth himself. And in it, they write, in dynamic and fluid situations such as the one in Los Angeles, state and local authorities are the most appropriate ones to evaluate the need for resources to safeguard life and property. Indeed, the decision to deploy the National Guard without appropriate training or orders risks seriously escalating the situation. Jonathan, all I can think about when I see some of the statements from the governor's office and the governor himself on X saying it's time for the National Guard troops to go home are the people who live in this area, the people who are trying to drive by on the 101, getting to wherever it is they want to go. And what would they think if they knew that the governor was saying, send the people who are here, sent by the president, to go home?
So there you have it. It's ridiculous. It's devolving into just craziness, man. If you want my personal opinion, I think the governor, Gavin Newsom, and the mayor of LA are both retards. You're literally allowing property and other stuff to be destroyed because you're not happy about federal agents being there. Then fine, then protest it, sue. But setting vehicles on fire and burning down neighborhoods, that's not that's not protesting, that's criminal behavior. Period. So there's no wiggle room there. In fact, I would even call it terrorism. But that's just me. So the question is, should I go down there on the street? And I'd probably bring me and my big bro. We should just go down there on the street and show you what's happening in real time. If you like that idea, let me know in the comments down below. And as always, stay petty, my friends.